Welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at the Audiosense T100. So first I want to thank the Audiosense T100 for giving me a discount on this one. So it's about $23. They gave me about $10 off. So I think I paid about $13 for this one, but I do want to thank them for the discount and take a look at their site on AliExpress if you want to take a look at it. So for those of you who haven't had a quick look at the Audiosense T100, it's kind of an odd-looking shell. Let me pull off the tip, and you can kind of see it's got a super thin nozzle as well, which is a bit unique. I mean, the whole thing is kind of unique. It's a 6.2 millimeter dynamic driver, super small nozzle, MMCX, and a kind of a clear plastic-ish shell. So a bit of a unique look. I was using it with these foam tips because it's got quite the peak that we'll get to in a second. So I was hoping that the foam tips would help. Maybe that's why they included them in the package. Who knows? But it does come with a bunch of tips, a nice case, and some more tips. So lots of accessories. The cable itself is kind of a stringy black mic version. I'm not sure if I picked the mic version or it's only a mic version. I'm not sure how that ended up with the mic version because I usually don't pick one. So that is that. So this is kind of everything you need to know about the Audiosense T100. It's got this wicked 4K peak. And for those of you who haven't listened to a set with a 4K peak, the Lark was a pretty famous one. It's like this piercing detail. It's very fatiguing, it's very sharp, and for fun you can EQ any IEM with a huge peak like that, and you'll get a sense for how painful that is in your ear. It sort of hits me right in the middle of my ear, and it's like this piercing sound that goes straight through your eardrum, kind of right into your brain. So yeah, I don't really recommend using this one without some kind of EQ, without doing something to knock that thing down, because it's quite fatiguing. So we're going to kind of spin through it really quickly because I don't think too many people are going to pick this one up with that kind of 4K peak. It's just a bit too fatiguing to use as a normal general IEM. So that sort of leads me to, there's plenty of other sets at $24 or less that don't have a 4K peak and sound perfectly fine and better than fine, such as the DQ6, which is a great set, CCA, CSN, another nice set. MT1 is a super cheap set that's really good, and the KS1, which is one of my favorites. So tons of other sets to buy in this price range, so no need to pierce your brain. So as I said, it's got this wicked 4K hyper-piercing, detailed, and fatiguing peak to it. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about that other than it's kind of painful to listen to. You can either listen at very low volumes or EQ it. I only listen to this with EQ. So especially at normal volumes, it's got this dry V shape, kind of quite sharp and analytical. Like I said, this 4K used to be called this fake detail peak, and I think KZ and some other guys used to use this as a way to introduce a little more detail into some of their older sets. So even though there's a ton of bass to it, there's not much warmth or body considering that high level of bass. It's kind of an odd sound to it, but for the most part it comes across as a very dry V shape. And there's this track called Past Life by Trevor Daniel and Selena Gomez. I think it's a newish track. I don't know, it's a nice track. So it just gives you an idea. So the first 37 seconds, his voice, and I think the beginning of her voice, her vocals, pretty good because they're kind of at that lower end and there's not really much going on other than the vocals. And then 37 seconds to this 103 point, not too bad. It's getting kind of slightly grating. At that point, you'd probably want to hit the EQ button. And then by 104, you really need EQ. There's a snare drum or there's some kind of drum there that's super piercing, and then her voice falls into the same range and it gets doubly piercing, but it just becomes piercing, fatiguing, dry, and thin. So that's the kind of second wrap up of how piercing this guy is. But as I said, the bass level is actually quite high when we look at it in the graph. It's actually, for a 6.2 millimeter dynamic driver, it actually has quite a bit of bass. And I'm almost positive they tried to counterbalance that 4K peak with a bunch of bass, because that's what you would try to do anyway. But as I said, the whole thing is sort of clean and analytical and sharp, and the bass is sort of no different. It's clean and fast. It's actually kind of interesting to listen to. But you can also EQ it into the boomy range if you want even more bass. It's got a ton of bass there, bass capability. And bassy songs do sound fine. Daft Punk's Get Lucky. That whole range of that song actually sounds pretty good on the T100. The vocals can be really good when either they don't hit the 4K or instruments aren't hitting the 4K. Just vocals alone can sound really nice. Upper females will go thin and piercing on you pretty quickly, but normal voices like Trevor Daniels' voice, it's detailed because of this 4K peak. It's very transparent. You don't have a lot of this V-shaped veiling that happens, so it's almost this very transparent, forward, sharp, and the staging is right between your eyes, so it's really close in and intimate. And some people like a vocal that close, but it's literally between your eyes. And like I said, it'll kind of go over sharpened and almost a digital feel to it if you listen to it. Treble is, again, this is one of these sets where it's okay before the 4K or okay after the 4K, but the 4K essentially ruins it in that lower treble region. There's not too much to say about it. Everything up to that point is okay. Once you hit it, it's sort of, that's the only thing you can focus on because it's fatiguing and piercing. And then beyond that, there's nice, almost a triple hornish blonde, peaks and valleys extension there. So not too far off from typical sets in this price range. And like I said, the staging is quite in your face. It's got average width, and it can go wide occasionally, and it sounds better when it goes wide. But there's not really any height to it, and there's no depth because everything is sort of in your face. So that's my quick take on the Audiosense T100. It's a good one to practice your EQ skills if you want to take on that challenge. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next time.